All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, we have a guest on with us today, Mr. Zuby. I would imagine many of you guys have heard of him. If not, you should. He is a rapper, author, podcaster, and coach, to name a few. But Zuby, thank you for coming on and chat with me today, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, good, Dallas, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. So I saw recently you're on vacation. How was that?
Yeah, really good, man. I went to Greece, Corfu specifically, for 9 days, which was really nice. The weather was beautiful. I've been stuck in the UK because of this whole COVID situation
Yeah.
for the whole year, pretty much. Normally, I travel multiple times a year. I was supposed to go to the States in May, June, and July, but all three trips had to get canceled, of course, because they've still got the travel restrictions going on. So yeah, I'd been stuck in the UK for much longer than usual. So it was nice to get out of it and go check out somewhere new.
Yeah, no, Greece is high on my list, man. I've been stuck I'm in Medellin, Colombia this whole time. So it's a great place to be stuck, but I just being stuck generally is the worst part, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we need options. Well, cool, man. Let's get into it. So there's so much to talk about. I know, we're all inundated with these 24-hour news cycles. Can't really get away from it, but we are obviously creeping closer to the elections, and so there's so much going on there. So what was your thoughts on Biden picking Kamala as his running mate? I'm curious what you thought about that.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're going straight into that. Um, I'm not surprised by it because, they're playing this identity politics game where he already had said that it was going to be a woman. So he'd already narrowed it down, because forget all that stuff of using meritocracy, but he specifically wanted a woman. And then I know there was a lot of pressure on him to specifically get, I hate the term, but so-called a woman of color, as they like to say in their lingo.
Yeah.
So that sort of narrowed it down somewhat. And based on the fact that I think she was really the only person who was one of the previous people who was running for the presidency who ticked both of those identity politics boxes, then, or should I say intersectional boxes, then that suggested to me already, okay, it might be Kamala Harris. I'm not a fan of her. I'm not a fan of him for hundreds of reasons.
Yeah.
And realistically, I mean, I think it's quite important because I don't think even if Joe Biden were to win, I think really people are kind of voting for who the vice president is realistically, because that's going to be the person who's pulling the strings. And if his health continues to decline, I mean, the guy is very old. If his health continues to decline and he can't, do his full term or something like that, then it's a scenario where the vice president, sometimes the vice president doesn't really matter, but in this situation, I think that it does. So I'm not surprised, but I'm not a fan. So that would be the shortest way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you on a lot of that. Yeah, I think health concerns are I mean, to name, yeah, I mean, there's more concerns I think that we can go through in this hour that we got together with Biden, but health concerns is obviously a big aspect of that. And yeah, it was really interesting to see that he picked her, right? I mean, like she did so poorly in the primaries, right? And then she drops out of the race on account of not having money, but she had, I think her campaign had like 20 million cash still on hand. It was more than any other candidate. So begs the question, where
She also called him a racist.
yeah, she called him a racist and
during the candidacy.
accusers in the same year. She's his running mate. Amazing.
Yeah,
Hey,
that was all just a joke.
Yeah, no,
Honestly, politics is stupid. Politics is it's so dumb. I don't know how people can take some of these people seriously. I honestly don't get it.
It's amazing, and I'll be honest. Like, I mean, I love. Obviously, I've got friends that are super into politics, friends that aren't. And of course, it's great for people to be informed and aware. But like, I'm at this point now where I know it's an election year, and it seems like people are ramped up and they feel sucked a bit more into the machine. It feels like a big year, so everybody has to pay attention. But we're in this weird time now where everybody thinks that they're like a pundit and they have a show where they're weighing in on it, or they have to have an opinion on something. And I don't know how we got so far away from that. I don't think you have to have an opinion on everything, especially things you don't know a ton about. But there is this conscious pressure that I feel that's happening a bit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think having an opinion on everything is a sign of stupidity. Honestly, like I have opinions on a lot of things, but things I have opinions about are things that I've actually thought about and done some research on, right? There are thousands, millions of topics around the world that I know absolutely nothing on. And so you're not going to hear me speaking on them in any kind of firm way because I just don't know. And I'm not afraid to say that I don't know. Yeah. Even when it comes to politics, I mean, I talk about politics on a very high level because I don't follow it. I have no interest in following it on a sort of day-to-day nitty-gritty basis. Like that's just
Yeah.
way to drive yourself crazy. But I'm interested in high level ideas. I'm interested in intellectual ideas. I'm a lot more interested in human beings and psychology and morality and all that kind of stuff, meaning and purpose. I'm far more interested in all that than I am in any sort of direct politics. I'm interested in culture. I'm interested in society. I'm interested in why people believe what they believe, why they do what they do, etc. So naturally that extends into politics to some degree. But yeah, I mean, if someone wanted to like have like a real deep nitty gritty political conversation, I'm actually not the guy. Like I can only talk on a high level and kind of give my more general broad observations on things.
Yeah, but I think that's just a sign of a level of awareness of knowing where you're at versus where you're not, right? I mean, I think awareness is in high demand these days. So yeah, so there's some kind of concept I wanted to talk to you about. This is something I've talked a lot about with friends, and I haven't really done content on yet. But this idea of, and I think this is a strategy we see over and over, but this sort of like creative naming, right? And this is kind of the best way I've phrased it. And a few examples of that would be a progressive, right? And so it's like, Zuby, I'm a progressive. Are you against progress? And you're like, no, totally not. And so, or like BLM, right? It's like, are you against Black Lives Matter? You're like, well, I think there's nuance. So you think Black people don't matter? You're like, no. There's a lot of gray in there. And I think we see that with like the Patriot Act as well. Even on, it's more of a like Republican champion thing, even though it was bipartisan and just happened at a weird time where it's like, if you're against this, you're not a patriot. And so I think people so many times, I think it's a really creative strategy that we've seen, let's just say establishment people use on all sides, that people get sucked into that. And now you see it. I mean, I'm such a big NBA fan, and I can't remember if, from something I've seen from you, probably if you're a basketball fan or not, but it's everywhere now, right? And it's so, and it used to be like this clear separation. And I'm totally for guys using their platforms, right? If you're LeBron James and you have your Twitter, your Instagram, or your time, great. But the what we see now with all these things, I mean, just it's so politicized, even the biggest corporations, and there's really no merging of kind of who's on what team anymore. No one's hiding it, and it's shameless in a lot of ways. And I don't know, do you think that this is something that is going to be continuing more and more often as we go, or do you think this is a sign of an election year and sort of the perfect mix for this, the kind of a perfect storm?
Yeah, I think it being an election year amps things up. It's happened before in 2016 for sure. It's happened before in 2012 and 2008 to some degree. I mean, 2008 was probably the first US election that I, from a distance, sort of paid any attention to, the first time Obama got elected. Before that, I don't know, it was always just kind of on in the background. I never really paid much attention, also due to a function of my age and the fact that I'm not American.
Yeah.
So it's something that happens every election year. I think it's new in the way that certain things are being done, especially now that we have social media. But I think this stuff has been going on forever. I think that's just how politics and human beings sort of do things. I don't think the strategies and methods changed that much over the decades and the centuries and even the millennia. I think you could probably go back 1,000 years ago, and the technology is different, but human beings are the same human beings. It's not like we've sort of massively evolved from people 1,000 years ago. Like we're the same. We've just got better stuff. So all of those tribal tendencies, all of the emotion, all of the human psychology, and the way to play on that in terms of, honest campaigning or dishonest campaigning or propaganda or media manipulation or framing things in certain ways. It's been going on forever, and people keep falling for it. This is the thing. It's like, that's the thing that frustrates me, is I'm just like, gosh, like, how do people still fall for some of this stuff? Like, it's so transparent. It's so obvious, right? Like, that's why I don't like a politician like Kamala Harris, right? Because she's such a politician, right? She's someone who will just say anything that is expedient. That's what it seems to me. It doesn't seem to me that she's someone who really has strong principles or values or even morals, but she'll just kind of like cackle and smile and say whatever is expedient in that moment. If it means calling Joe Biden a racist, I don't know whether she believes he is or not, but that's what she called him, essentially. And
the question is,
ahead.
did you think he was a racist? Because if you did, then that's crazy. But if you didn't, then you lied and called him a racist, which is equally bad. So which one is it? But nobody's pressing them with these questions. Because
No, like whatever whatever the answer is, she's not being honest, right? Like whatever the situation was, and then when confronted, she just said, "Oh, it was a debate, it was a joke," or something like that. And it's like, well, you're lying somewhere here. Either you think he is, and you were being honest the first time, and now that you have a chance to get this power that you've been desperately wanting for decades,
yes,
then you're willing to slide it to the side. Like, look, if I genuinely believed that someone was like, think about it, right? If you genuinely believed that somebody was like a bad person or was legitimately racist or something,
yeah,
um, then if that person's like, yeah, I want you to be my running mate or what, you'd be like, no, I'm good actually. Like if you actually had values and you had principles, you'd be like, no, actually, I don't want to be the running mate of someone who I actually think is part of the problem. That's what an honest person would say,
yep,
right? So, but look, this is politics. Like I don't even, I try not to knock people for being what they are, right? So like politicians are going to politician,
yep,
right? So I don't have this huge level and standard that I hold them up to as politicians, because I just know that's what politicians do. You know, comedians tell jokes, politicians say whatever is politically expedient,
yep.
whether or not it's true. They give politician answers. You ask them a direct question, and they'll go on meandering on some stuff that evades that's it's what they do. So I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, did you see how he dodged that question? It's like, that's just a politician,
It's
you
part
know?
of the game. Yeah, yeah. And I think a perfect example of that is with Nancy Pelosi going to the hair salon in their district. It's like the response is they set me up. It's like it doesn't matter. You did the thing. You weren't supposed to do the thing. Like no, but it doesn't. Like it's like it's not like you don't get your excuse can't be a setup if you're buying drugs from a hooker because the hooker's a cop. Like you still went to go do the thing. So it doesn't. The other things are less important. Uh, you know,
And she wasn't set up to begin with. So like,
no,
let's not even entertain the idea that she was set up, because that's
it's
garbage.
exactly. It's crazy.
Since when do salons set people up, set their clients up to, you know, the whole thing is just nonsense. They're all just dishonest. Like she's such a Pelosi again. Like I have no respect for these people. Honestly, I don't respect them at all.
Same.
But at the same time, I don't have high standards for them, because I'm like, well, this is what they've been doing for the past few decades. This is how they got in these positions. What's Pelosi worth? $300 million? Why is a politician worth $300 million? Like, how does that work?
How does
You
that?
know,
You do the math and
the
you're
presidential salary is 400K. I mean, I think maybe in her case, her husband's rich or something, but there are a lot of politicians out there who are like decamillionaires,
yeah.
despite the fact their salary has never been in the seven figures.
Yeah,
So
and this is what stuff. So I would imagine you, like I, have a lot of friends who who identify as liberal, identify as conservative, and sort of a whole mix in between. And a lot of my friends who identify as liberal, I enjoy talking to them as well. At least the ones who are reasonable about all these things, and we'll have a fair conversation to kind of explore stuff. And the difference I find, or the thing I find with it is that people oftentimes if you say these bad things about somebody, let's say who is Democrat or liberal, the people who identify as that almost feel like it's an attack on them because they're like now
sure.
associated with this sort of group identity with it, and it's really not that. And I think that that's the good thing to get across is even with some of the things that are happening that you or I may have an issue with. It's like even with BLM, I have a lot of friends who've gone out and been in the streets, and it's like they have good intentions. But the road to
Sure.
hell table good intentions, and that doesn't mean that what you're doing is necessarily kind of worth the time and effort that you're putting into it if it doesn't have a goal. And I think a lot of these things that they're designed to not have a goal because then they don't need to end, right? And that's kind of why there's so many people who
Mhm.
just make their bones on like oppression hustling and race hustling and some of them in some ways I think if you really dug down they don't want it to end because that means that there's no longer a need for Al
Of course
Sharpton to
not.
show up at these events.
Dude, of course not. They love it, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. He had come to my high school, man. There was an issue at my high school. So I went to high school in California, and there was an issue with this girl in security, and she couldn't eat cake, and they said like we don't care, we're gonna do it. And then there was a fight, da da da. It was just a whole mess. The next day we come, the road shut down. Al Sharpton's out in front of the school speaking, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Thought I was in like Mr. Deeds for a second, but man, have you have you? I want to ask you, Zuby, about because I know for COVID, and I think this is around the time you and I started following each other obviously during the pandemic. Did you see the recent report on what the CDC put out with 6% of the people who died of COVID actually died of specifically COVID. The other 94 had on average 2.5 comorbidities. I want to know what you thought about that. Obviously, it's something that's been censored when people have been posting it, even though it's from the science and where people want people to get information from. What are your thoughts on that, I guess, and how has it kind of evolved? Like I said, you've been sort of a beacon of truth that I've been looking at. That, your thoughts on this stuff as it's been developing.
I'll be honest, man. I haven't looked at the report. All I've seen is the headline.
Yeah.
So what you told me is all I know.
Okay.
So I can't speak like I said, I don't speak on things that I'm ignorant about. So I haven't looked into the report.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, that only 6% of the people dying are dying actually from the disease, again, I'm not surprised. Like, people have kind of been saying this. I didn't know it would be as low as 6% that work these things out. But I mean, again, it wouldn't surprise me. We already know, like, I don't know, it's September now, and people are acting like we still have just the same information we had in January, which is not the case. And it's like, look, if you're going to go with the science, then you need to go with the science when the science is updated. And you've now got data from all across the world. I mean, the most annoying thing with the whole COVID situation, for me, in terms of the response, has just been, it's been a lot of things. It's been a lot of things I don't like. It's been emotions over logic and rationale. It's been cherry picking data points. It's been totally ignoring extremely important data, which would inform better policy decisions. There's been this whole one size fits all approach, which is totally stupid. Like, look, in terms of stuff that's important, mm-hmm. Like, if you look at who's dying of COVID-19 or dying with COVID-19, shall we say, we already know who this is. We've known who it is for months, right? It's elderly people, especially people who are over the age of 70, especially people who are over the age of 70 and have other comorbidities, whether that is asthma or diabetes or simply being obese, which is a large percentage of them. Yep. It's not killing children. It's virtually not killing young people, right? If you're under 40, if you're under 50 even, like, the chances of you dying of this thing are, don't quote me on this, but probably less than 99, like probably less than 0.0100. Like, I don't even know. Minute, right? Of course there are, you get rare cases. You can get rare cases with any disease, any situation where, oh my gosh, a 35-year-old died, a 28-year-old died of a heart attack. That can happen. Yeah. 28-year-old can die of a heart attack, but if we don't pretend that, like, 28-year-olds are generally at massive risk of heart attacks and strokes, because they're not. So this whole one size approach and treating, 15-year-olds the same way you're treating 85-year-olds and applying the exact same rules and regulations and guidelines to them across it's so stupid. It's so stupid. And the thing is, this would matter less if the effects of the lockdown and the measures and the regulations, if those didn't have any significant negative effects, then it doesn't really matter if you overreact, right? So if it's like, okay, you know what, we can do this lockdown, we can overreact, and we don't have to worry about any other ramifications, but there are so many negative ramifications in terms of people's health, mentally and physically, in terms of the economy, in terms of unemployment, in terms of massive inflation down the line, in terms of children not being able to go to school. What's the psychological impact of this? How much have suicides gone up? How much of, like, all these other things, some which you can measure, some which you cannot measure, how much of that all gone up? How much of these riots and looting and violence in the streets, how much of that is due to the fact people have been locked up in their houses for 6 months, right? Like, these are real things, and we're still talking 2020, and 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, like, the world hasn't totally recovered from 2008 yet. That was the last proper recession. And 12 years later, we're still seeing some of the ramifications from that. So it's very possible that in the year 2030, there's still going to be ramifications for all of this nonsense that's happened over the past 9 months, and which is still to come. And it's like, people don't want to be honest about this. And as soon as you try to have a rational conversation, people are just saying, oh, you don't care if people will die. You want my grandma to die. You're being selfish. Like, people just act like emotional 7-year-olds. And it's just like, look, just stop. Right? I know of 4 people who have died with COVID-19. So I've got 3 doctors in my family. I'm not speaking from the position of someone who has like, who's just totally detached and doesn't care or whatever. It's like, no, I'm just speaking from someone who's not totally driven by his emotions and who can look at numbers and logically and rationally put stuff together. And then it's so frustrating because you get all this stuff, you get all this hypocrisy. You know, you mentioned the way the politicians are behaving. I saw something today saying that apparently the government gyms have been open in San Francisco for several months, whilst all the public gyms have been closed. I saw that. You had the whole thing where people who protested the lockdown were being admonished. They were being called grandma killers. They were saying that they didn't care about people, that, you know, came down on them with a hammer. 2 weeks later, you get the Black Lives Matter protests, and you get public health officials, you get politicians coming out saying that these riots, they support them, and that these riots are more important. Racism is a bigger epidemic than COVID-19. So you can protest Black Lives Matter with tens of thousands of people. And then they change the narrative. And I'm just like, dude, like at this stage, like I've been skeptical of you guys for a long time, but any confidence, any trust, like it's just eroded.
And it's the same, yeah, the confidence is eroding, and it's this, like you said, the technology's changed earlier, but the tactics are, and the techniques are the same. And so, yeah, with all these things, it's like, with COVID, it's like, you know, if you don't have the mainstream opinion and you're not a doctor, you shouldn't talk because you're not an expert. Or if you want to talk about all, you know, all the issues people are protesting for, it's like, if you don't agree with this totally, and you're, let's say, just not Black, then like you can't have an opinion on this because you don't have a shared experience, you haven't lived it, so don't talk. And you're like, all these things are about
even if you're
less
I was
conversation.
gonna say, even if you're Black, you better have the right opinion.
Exactly. I mean, you know that better than anybody, right? You better have the right opinion, or
Of
else,
course.
you know, or like a Candace, she's a Black white supremacist, and you're like, she's Clayton Bigsby now. Like, I don't get what we're doing, but man, but that's the thing with COVID, and I want to let you go on that because I appreciate your perspective on just how this is all shaped out. And so for me, yeah, with COVID, again, it's about weighing the totality of it, because I think like we're setting up where a lot of people are it's top down, that you were kind of trying to booby trap and bubble wrap the world so that, you know, there's no issues. And so we like can hyper sensationalize things. If you track it every single day, if they were to track the number of kids that went missing every day on CNN, that would actually start to be important to people. And if you tracked even, you know, deaths by peanuts, there'd probably be no peanut butter on the shelves every single day because of the way it's tracked. And so early on with COVID, the numbers, what bugged me the most about it is I felt like it was disingenuous. And I know we had less information at the beginning than we do now. And that's obvious. But the way it was reported in the beginning was we were drawing death rates off of only people with a positive test, and then people who died. And by that, if only by those same metrics, the flu has a 10% death rate. And we know that's not true because they can factor in all the other people who are asymptomatic, who don't die and get over it. So I felt like that was disingenuous, and most people have no idea about antibodies and, you know, the ins and outs of just how all this stuff works. And so I feel like that was intentionally done from the beginning because most people don't see through that, and they're going to just rationalize as we don't have the info, so we don't know. And then everything's kind of just been moving the goal line, because it's like what they say, you can't just kind of do it overnight. But if I'm like, Zuby, don't talk about this issue, and then next week, don't talk about that one, but you can talk about anything else. Pretty soon you find yourself in a hole where it happens slow and you didn't realize kind of where you're at now. And so it was like, you know, slow the curve. And then every single thing we wanted to do. And then also we have this blind faith in a vaccine. We've never taken a vaccine in less than 4 years from the moment we knew we needed it to when it was developed. So like why people have this absolute certainty that we're going to have a vaccine in under 12 months and that it's going to work and just cure it. It's not like we have vaccines that people take and still die from the diseases, right? That's obvious. So yeah, where the certainty about that makes it, you know, I find interesting. You know, then you have things like HCQ where there's like, you know, there's doctors talking about using it in combination with azithromycin and with zinc, and when using those three was effective. But all these studies go, oh, we studied HCQ, it doesn't work. And you're like, yeah, but you gave someone 4x the dose. And so it's just, but people aren't following the specifics. And so I think we're up against a real monster here, right? That can sort of, you know, because so many people, you kind of have this, I forgot who it was. I'll have to find it, but it was, you kind of have your top layer, right, of like the 3-letter organizations for news, right? And then you kind of have that bottom layer of, you know, ones that people know about, but they're mostly like web, internet, blog based. And so many of them, they deem them as like A-list sources. And so like, it's totally cool for like the Guardian or whoever to pull an NBC source because it's an NBC source, but the NBC source is an unnamed source. So really there isn't one. And so we're in this like weird where they'll go like, oh, we'll put a retractment on the article, but it happened a week later and it's at the bottom and no one saw it. And we're good to go. And it's a real like reality war. I think Dave Rubin said that the other day, and I think that I've been thinking about that since I heard him say that. It's like a reality war that we're in the middle of.
Yeah, no, that sounds accurate, man. And and people, only listen to the sources that they want to listen to, whether that's with individuals or that's news media, et cetera. Like this year, we've seen every type of individual and collective sort of psychological phenomena that exists.
Yeah.
Right. So on an individual level, confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, just general, feelings over facts, use of anecdote instead of use of statistics, et cetera, et cetera. And then on a collective level, you've seen, collective fear, you've seen collective blame and guilt, you've seen mob mentality, you've seen all of these things. 1 second, sorry, man, I got to get the door.
Oh, go ahead.
Someone's doing a delivery, yeah? So you can
I'll pause it real quick. No big deal.
Okay.
All right. Super quick pause. We had to get deliveries handled. Cool. So where were we? So much to talk about, man. And I wanted to, so I know you said you're into obviously a whole range of other topics. So I wanted to see if this at all is up your alley. So, and I can share you the link post our call. There was a doc a buddy of mine sent me, and it's on the CIA.gov website. It was CIA like a study that got released to the public and got declassified. And so it was called. They studied something called the gateway process. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Okay, so it's this really interesting study, and what they were doing was they were studying the brain, the relationship with your soul, consciousness, life energy, and the body, and how those things are distinctly separate, and using techniques to even the levels of frequencies between the left and right side of your brain, and then people could like leave their body and observe, or sort of almost like a psychedelic trip, sort of, get out into sort of the absolute, into the infinite, to where sort of like the more universal knowledge is, and, learn and take in some of those things and then come back. And this was this long study that they did for like almost 15 years. I think it was a guy named Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute. And it all got declassified. It's crazy. You got to read it if you haven't seen it. Okay. But yeah, but it was just that idea that I think for me, I mean, are you, I know you're not obviously somebody who does drugs. You're pretty straight, like, clean, straight guy. But have you ever experimented or dabbled with psychedelics at all? Zuby, I'm curious.
No, never had, never will.
Never had, never will. Interesting. Why not?
I don't do drugs, period. I don't touch them. Doesn't interest me. And yeah, no, I don't do drugs. Any kind of drug, no.
Nice. Cool, man. How'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? What was it like?
Saudi Arabia. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, man. So maybe that's a factor. No, not military. My dad's a doctor, but we lived out there for 20 years. So yeah, that's where I primarily grew up.
You speak any other languages?
I can speak conversational French and Spanish when I practice a little bit. Okay. But unfortunately not Arabic or Igbo, which are the two languages that, had my life been very slightly different, then I would be fluent in both of those. But yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to learn either, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, so what are you working on right now? I see you all over the place with, I know you had your book recently. What's in progress right now for you?
I'm going to start writing my next album in a couple of weeks. Okay. So I'm going to be releasing a whole new album in 2021. Of course, my OK Dude single came out earlier this year. I've released a ton of merchandise this year. I'm also, of course, I got my own podcast, Real Talk with Zuby, which comes out, every Friday. Got well over 100 episodes now. So I'm constantly, doing those, booking new guests, getting that going and growing. And then, I do coaching. I do a lot of things, man. I do coaching. I'm working with about 7 different clients at the moment. I also released my Twitter course recently called Going Viral, as well as Conquering Twitter, which is an expanded edition. So there's a lot of stuff happening, man. Constantly creating, constantly working with new people,
Yeah.
helping people, creating stuff. You know, I'm very much a creative entrepreneur. Like I do a lot of stuff. The book is still selling very well. I've sold over 3,000 copies of my book, Strong Advice now, and that's 100% independently without even being on Amazon. So, you know, things are growing. You know, followers continue to grow. Got over 500,000 followers now across my platforms. So yeah, man, it's been, this year has been really successful business wise, despite the fact that, despite all the challenges that have come with the whole pandemic and the response to it and the travel restrictions and all that kind of stuff. Like I haven't been able to do any live shows.
Yeah.
But unlike a lot of other musicians, I've got a lot of other stuff going on. So even if I kind of get one thing temporarily shut down, there's a lot of other stuff that I can still do. So yeah, there's a lot more to come, man. A lot more to come. I'm gonna write more books. I'm gonna make more music. I'm gonna put out a lot more podcasts. I already do everything that I want to do. I'm just trying to do everything bigger and better.
Beautiful. Yeah, yeah. Momentum's a big part of that. But I think that's awesome. And I mean, I think a lot of people, and on this channel, I want to start putting a lot more content out about just entrepreneurship. For people, I think a lot of people are at so many different parts of that journey. What
Mhm.
would you say are some things that have made you successful? And obviously you've been successful in a number of different areas. You mentioned author with music, even, moonlighting as a political analyst, even though you don't. Um, and some of those areas. So what do you think for people who are, either having mediocre results as an entrepreneur and what they're doing, or want to get started, and what are the keys to success?
Wow, man. I mean, look, I mean, a lot of people consider me successful by my own, knowing what my own capabilities and potential are. I don't really consider myself successful yet. I think I'm on the path to it. But in terms of things that I've learned, having a clear vision and understanding of why you're doing what you're doing and why you want to do it. So I know why I do what I'm doing. So it's not difficult for me to stay motivated, stay inspired, and to see and double check when I'm making progress towards that, and perhaps from time to time when I'm not. Um, Perseverance and persistence is incredibly important. So I've been working, I mean, I put out my first album in 2006,
Okay.
and I have been, I've been a full-time, I've been self-employed since 2011. So for 9 years now, November 2011, I quit my job, and I've been a full-time
What was your
musician
job?
and entrepreneur since. I used to be a management consultant.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, so worked with a lot of big companies. Um, so yeah, and then in 20, like most people who know me, I'd say probably at least 98% of people who have heard of me discovered me in the past 18 months. Right. And this is after striving for nearly, nearly about 13, 14 years to get my name out there.
Yeah.
And then 98% of the visible results have just occurred in less than 2 years. And that's often how growth can be. So the as a creative, and you need to be willing and able to persist and persevere through that. And the vast majority of people cannot and will not. So oftentimes you can succeed by outlasting everybody else. If there's a marathon going on and everyone else sprints off, and eventually they get tired and they drop off halfway or 2/3 of the way or whatever, and you just keep going, you're going to win.
Turtle in the
And
hair.
you go ahead.
The turtle in the hair, or the turtle versus
Yeah,
the.
yeah, for real, man, for real. And you just don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what opportunities are going to come your way. There's no way that I could have predicted beginning of 2019 if someone had told me, you know what, Zuby, this year you're gonna gain like 250,000 followers, and you're going to be on Fox News and Sky News and BBC and the Joe Rogan Experience and the Ben Shapiro Show and the Candace Owens. You're going to get invited to the White House twice. You're going to get invited to the Pentagon. I'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? Like
You're like,
how,
yeah,
how and why? Like I'm a musician. I'm an independent rapper from the south of England. Like why? What do you mean I'm going to be invited to the White House, right? And all of that stuff happened, and there's no way I could have foreseen that. I could have predicted it, etc.
yeah,
And that's kind of how it goes. Like growth is really not. It's really not linear. So yeah, perseverance, working at what you're good at, knowing why you're doing it, and then persevering. Like if you do that, then you can't really go wrong.
yeah, totally. I think momentum's such a big part of it. There was funny enough, I don't know, I always think of this reference, but I think it was like 13, 14, man. And I'd read a Trump book that we had just found at like a dollar store. I think it was Think Big. And in the book, just this one lesson I distinctly remember, he was just talking a story about a friend of his. And the guy was very successful in New York, like absolutely crushing it. And he got an offer that was just crazy to sell his business. I think he sold it for like, he was like 900 million or something like that, something crazy. And the guy told Donald, he was like, you know, I did it. I sold my business. I crushed it. Like I did what I wanted to do, the exit. Now I'm just going to go sail and enjoy with my wife and eat fruit and get tan and live it up. And the guy did, and he said the guy did, and the guy was out doing that for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And the guy gave him a call one day. He said, I'm bored, man. I'm just so
Of course.
He's like, I thought this is what I want to do every day. He goes, I'm bored. I want to get back in the action. And he said that the guy comes back into the same industry, and which he's been out of for a couple of years, and thinking, oh, you know, I've crushed this once before. This will be no big deal. Things must be the same. And he said the guy just got absolutely wrecked because the industry changed a bit, right? And he was going off kind of what was and not what isn't. And so he said that like that made him think that like I never want to fully stop making forward progress on things, because you know just losing the momentum is everything. I think that's such a big part of it. Like you said, is people don't see the 12, 13 years you're hustling. Some people do, but most people don't. And then it'll look like you just popped overnight or on accident. But the only reason you're even able to pop and then B, sustain, you know, where that pop brought you to is because of the perseverance and the work you've done prior. So that's awesome. I think it's a great lesson for people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, you put in the work, and then I view it as planting seeds, and you know, you don't know when those seeds are going to germinate, but you just keep planting seeds, keep watering every single day, you know, just keep working on stuff every single day. Every day doesn't need to be a home run, but just take little steps forward, you know, with whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're creating. And then over time, you can look back and see, oh, wow, okay. You know, like anything, right? If you just go to the gym and do like one rep of everything, it's like, okay, that's not a workout, right? Each individual rep does nothing. Each pull up does nothing. Each deadlift does nothing, but it's like grains of sand. And then over time, you can look back in, you know, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and be like, oh, wow, okay, I'm now like 3 times as strong on this exercise as I was when I started. So, wow. Yeah, a lot of things just build up like that, and you don't really, you know, you'll get little times where stuff goes backwards. Even you'll get times where stuff really accelerates, or you get a great opportunity. But even with those opportunities, the way you are able to even spot them and to take advantage of them comes from all of the experience beforehand. So when 2019 presented an opportunity to me and I went viral in February 2019, I mean, I sustained that virality all year. Right? A lot of people go viral all the time, but they, you know, their tweet goes viral. Gets, man, I've seen tweets get more likes than my deadlift one ever did. I've seen tweets go viral with, you know, man, this tweet got, you know, 100,000 likes or something, which is crazy. Millions and millions of people see it, and that person doesn't know what to do with it, right? They have no experience. They have nothing to offer. They've got nothing there, so they've totally just missed that opportunity. Whereas in my case, I was like, okay, cool. I can turn this into that. I can turn it into that. I can redirect this attention towards my music. I can redirect some of it towards my podcast. Oh, you know what? I can now write this book, and then I can redirect some of the energy that way. I can speak to this person, that person, jump on all of these different opportunities and let people know what Zuby is all about, so that they may discover me from this thing. But then months later, years down the line, even if that was the gateway that they discovered me through, they realized that there's a lot more to me and what I have to offer the world than, you know, a single 9-second video.
Yeah, no, I mean, you had value nets in place, and value nets kind of being bi-directional, where, you know, you have these value nets of either skills, products, or services that you could offer people that would bring value to you, but simultaneously brings value to them. And so being able to capitalize on that wave is necessary, because then you can retain the wave and, you know, and grow a bigger wave from it. Well, that's what they say, man. The grass is greener where you water it, right?
Makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah. Well, beautiful, man. What else do we want to get into? know we're all over the place today with all this. What are your thoughts on how the elections are going to play out? Like, I'm not saying make it necessarily a prediction who's going to win or not, but I think the writing is on the wall and kind of obvious with the mail-in voting stuff, at least in the U.S., and how some people see that playing out, where we could have a situation where somebody wins and we need to recount and keep counting, and then 10 days later we have a very different decision. So I don't know if you're in the camp thinking that that's a possibility, but what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've got $500 on Trump winning that was placed at the beginning of the year.
Good odds?
Was that?
Did you get good odds? What, did you bet early?
Nah, not really. No, no, no. I mean, that's the bet that I should have placed in 2015 when I had that gut feeling, and everyone was telling me not to, and I made the dreaded mistake of actually listening to people, which I will never do again. No, but no, I tend to I should go with my instincts because they tend to be more accurate than
Always.
the common consensus.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't know. Like, I don't know all of the details regarding like the mail-in voting and stuff like that. I also think that despite the fact that it is close, like a lot of stuff can change in 2 months. So I think that things depend. I don't think it's, I mean, at the beginning of the year, prior to COVID, prior to a whole lot of stuff, I kind of thought Trump had it in the bag.
Totally.
I still think he's going to win. Um, I don't know all the ins and outs of the voting stuff. Sure, that can change the game if they go ahead with that. I don't even know who makes those decisions as to whether they're going to do the mail voting and whatnot. I don't understand this is where I'm out of my depth, right? Because I don't follow it. I don't follow it strongly enough to
Yeah.
know that. But I think in terms of where society and the culture is going, I think that Trump should. I think he should win, and I think a lot of people who didn't vote for him last time will. I think the most of the people who did vote for him last time will vote for him again, and I think a lot of people who didn't last time will. I don't see that many people. I don't foresee that many people going in the other direction. Um, but who knows? I mean, there'll be people who've calculated all the math. I know you guys have the electoral college and all that. So
Yeah.
it'll probably come down to some specific states like it always tends to. And it'll depend on this factor and that factor. And I don't have the knowledge nor inclination to gain the knowledge
Yeah.
to do all of that number crunching because I have better things to do with my time. So,
Totally.
but
Yeah. A lot of the states where people think it might come down to are, unironically enough, kind of some of the states where some of these recent events have happened with, police being involved and and there being sort of riots, protests after the fact, and so that's interesting. I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on, but regardless, it's compelling and worth looking into on a lot of that stuff. No, cool, man. That makes a lot of sense. Have you
yeah.
ever heard of Yuri Bezmenov? Are you familiar with that clip? He was like the former KGB agent, and he was giving like an interview.
Yeah. And I saw it years ago. It's funny. People always send it to me, and I yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah. What do you think that there's some truth into sort of the playbook and the strategy
Oh, absolutely.
into what we're seeing
Of
now?
course. Yeah, of course, man. Of course. Dude, a lot of the stuff that's playing out now started in like, a lot of it goes back decades, man.
Yep.
Even a lot of the social justice stuff, like all of this stuff has its roots in, the Frankfurt School stuff. A lot of stuff like this goes back to the 60s. A lot of this stuff it's not new. It's just that it's getting mainstreamed and people are finally actually seeing it. It's not some conspiracy theory. Like, you can go on Wikipedia and look up the roots of all this stuff, whether it's critical race theory or like Saul Alinsky and his tactics, or like, even the whole anti-fascist thing, like the whole Antifa thing, right? This stuff goes back decades.
Yeah.
So people can look at this. It's not some like right-wing conspiracy theory or something, right? Look at how hard Marxism and postmodernism have influenced the universities, and how many of these professors, et cetera, go by some of these theories and promote them to their students and all. There's a whole lot of stuff going on like that. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Do you think that where do you think the source of that is? And so, and this might be a really difficult question to answer, but I'm curious what you think. Do you think that in a lot of ways, if you break down the world, and in many ways people and reality at its core is a lot like code, right? It's kind of binary, ones and zeros. So there's, at its core, most things are sort of the same, right? So is this just a flaw in the code? Is this something that must exist, sort of this sort of mentality that's persisted over time? Is this people with bad intentions using this as a tool to push forward their agenda, and they kind of really don't care what happens as a result? What do you think is the core of where this ideology sort of persists from and is being directed from to see a lot of the things that we're seeing, these changes coming onto society? I don't know if that's if I frame that question the right way, but
Yeah, I mean, primarily academia.
why are
Most of these
they,
ideas and ideologies primarily come from academia.
why is academia viewing these as credible and even moving them up the priority list to teach people? Where does that come from, do you think?
Because people are indoctrinated and radicalized. And I think that a lot of this stuff preys on things that human beings are susceptible to, including compassion, right? This is one of the worst things about the whole like racial politics, even some of the BLM stuff, even some of the Antifa stuff, etc., is that it preys on
Good people.
people who it preys on people's desire to have meaning and have purpose and to feel like the good guy and to feel like they're fighting against the evil system and the bad guy, whatever. Like, if you can understand what these people really believe, then their actions make sense, right? If you view the world rationally and reasonably and you don't believe all the bunk, then it looks like what they're doing makes absolutely no sense. But if you understand that in their minds, Donald Trump actually is a fascist dictator and he actually is imposing white supremacy, and the cops are actually just driving around like taking pot shots at black people and killing them for no reason,
Yeah.
and the system doesn't care, and capitalism is out to get you, and everyone who has stuff that you don't have has it because they stole it from you, and America is, institutionally and systematically racist and sexist and home. If you believe, like, a good question is, why would someone believe all that? But if someone does believe all that, then what they're doing makes sense. Right? What they're doing makes sense. Right? If you did actually have Hitler in power, Trump is not Hitler and he's nothing close to it. And comparing them in itself is deeply offensive on multiple levels. But if someone genuinely believed that, if Hitler were coming or he were there, then, violent resistance against the state, against the authorities, doing everything it can to get him out of office and all that, it would then make sense. So that is the logical issue that's happened, where people have been programmed and indoctrinated. The media obviously has a role in this, right, in terms of getting people to believe this stuff and get them so jacked up that they don't just feel that, if you like see these weird Antifa people, they legitimately think they're the good guys.
100%.
Right? Even as they beat people, even as they throw Molotov, like, they legitimately have convinced themselves that they are the good guys.
Yeah,
When you see people, and you see it in nonviolent ways, like, what is cancel culture? When you're seeing these people on Twitter, on social media, like, going after people, trying to get them to lose their jobs, lose their sponsors, like, cancel this person, erase it, right? They think that they are fighting a demon, right? And if you're fighting like a genuine evil, then it makes sense to behave in that way. The problem is that they're not, right? It's in their brain, right? They've been propagandized into believing all this stuff.
yeah.
So that's what's kind of scary, because it's a lot more scary to deal with people who are doing evil or doing wrong, who are convinced that they're doing good. That's a lot more scary than people who are doing evil, who know they're doing evil.
For sure. Definitely.
Right? Because someone who's doing evil, unless you're a true sociopath or psychopath, there's like a limit to how much evil you can do. Right? There's a limit. It's like, okay, like, I can do a little bit of bad stuff, but I won't go that far. But if you are truly convinced that what you're doing is right, then morally, your compulsion is to do more of it, take it to the extreme, take it as far as you can. And that's where, like, hardcore, this is literally what religious extremism is.
Yeah.
Right? This is literally what political or ideological extremism is, right? You believe, like, suicide bombers, they think they're the good guys.
Yep.
Right? They think they're the good guys. They're so convinced in their convictions that by me going and blowing up this marketplace and killing innocent men, women, and children, this is my ticket to heaven. this is what God wants me to do. Like, you know, I'm speaking as someone who is religious, who believes in God, right? Like that is right. Like that's such an extreme way to take things, right? Like 99.9% of religious people are like, oh, no, no, no. Like that's, you know, we'll condemn that and be like, no, that's not, I can, whatever voice you think in your head that's telling you to do that, like, that's not God, you know?
Well, well,
But that's why it's so scary.
yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Is people who truly believe that they're doing it for good. That's scary to fight against, because it seems harder to get people to walk that back when you, because
Oh
no,
yeah.
such an ego destroyer when you realize that you've been wrong and believing nonsense for so long. But that's why it's especially really stupid. Like, look, man, it's hard for me to say, oh, like I'm Republican, I'm conservative. It's hard for me to say that in some ways because there's still a very recent weight of people like George Bush, who's an absolute moron, who was terrible for the U.S. And so, and like the Mitt Romneys of the world and all these people, but it's like I love people like Ron Paul, right? And I think like if you
Yeah.
look at, you know, a lot of the leadership these days, I think there's people on the Republican side who I think are good intentioned people. I don't agree with them on everything, but I think they have good intentions and I think they have decent plans to get towards stuff. But I think it's a real special kind of stupid for some of these people who are out there in the streets. Like, I mean, Antifa is a perfect example of it. Who think that they think that they're the resistance and that they're against the machine. But it's like what you think in your ideology is in line with the NBA, CNN, NBC, ABC, Hollywood, Apple, Google, Facebook. It's like who's left? Who that is the mainstream. I mean, that is the machine. So you literally have like, and that's what's so amazing is like they've almost convinced people that conservative Republicans are the rich evil ones, even though the three biggest companies in America are all super liberal. And so they almost, it's like a brainwashed army that is disconnected from reality, that those are just verifiably true things, but to still feel like you're the resistance fighting against what? You know, I mean, have you ever seen Trump supporters just beat people at a Joe Biden rally? I've never seen it. You know, it's like,
I have, I have not. I have not. No. To be fair, I haven't. To be fair, I
yeah,
haven't seen Biden supporters beating up Trump supporters either.
yeah,
Right.
no, totally.
And Antifa are not. And Antifa are not Biden supporters, by the way. Like they don't like Antifa. Don't like liberals either.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I love that Antifa.com forwards to JoeBiden.com. I think that's amazing. Whoever did
That's
that, but
interesting. I didn't
um,
know.
yeah, it actually does. It's so funny, but no, but I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think these are rogue people that are, I think, like brainwashed beta males who get crazy when mob mentality happens. I think that's kind of what a lot of people are. I mean, I've gone to Portland a lot, been to Seattle a lot, and there's something going on up
I'm
there, man.
sorry.
I have some great I have great friends and family who live there too. Just like everywhere, there's great people, there's bad people. This goes without being
Of
said,
course.
but there's something else going on up there that it's just this real special kind of storm of like mad at the world and like radicalization of people who think like, you know, money shouldn't exist, and you're like, do you ever have friends who tell you that these are dumb ideas or push back at all? And people don't, and that's why, kind of like you said, the further people go down a path, it seems harder to bring them back from that path when they think they're on the path for good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting times, man. The best times, but
Understatement.
yeah. Amazing, man. Well, man, hey, we're getting close here to the hour that you were lucky enough to give to us here on the channel, Zuby. So I want to thank you, man. I really enjoyed the conversation, bro. Would love to chat and have you on again. And anything you're doing that I can help get out to my people and have them support you and check out your stuff would be awesome.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, yeah, we'll talk soon, man. I'll reach out to you soon. But thank you guys for watching. Those of you guys who are still sticking around here on the end of the video, it was a pleasure. Zuby, have an awesome day, man. We'll talk soon.
Nice one, Dallas. Take care.
Thanks, man.